Good morning, Dwayne here, Dry Creek Wrangler School. Going to do a horse video this morning. A lot of my original guys are like, oh my goodness, I thought he'd quit working horses. No, we're going to do one. I'm going to redo a video on a subject that I did when I very first started this channel. And it was a pretty darn good video, but we lost a few there at the beginning, technical difficulties, and that one got lost. And so I'm going to redo it again. And I'm going to talk about where the saddle goes on the horse. Saddling a horse, proper saddle placement. Now, you say, Dwayne, that's a very basic, it's a subject that you would be shocked how many people are wrong. I watched a video the other day on YouTube, a young man. I'm sure he's really good at what he does. I'm sure he's a fine young man. He's a nice young man, but he was doing a video on saddling the horse and where the saddle goes on the horse and it was totally wrong. It was completely wrong. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't take it. And so I got to do one, and I got to show you how, no. Biscuit says, I don't want to stand here this morning. I didn't sign a contract. I don't want to be on camera, but we're not going to let him paw because that's just a sign of his impatience. I don't want to do what you want to do. And so that's what that was. That was to let him know it's not about what you want, and you can't throw a little tiny temper tantrum when I ask you to do something. So look at him as, oh shucks, Dad, I'm sorry. So anyhow, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna talk about this anatomically, okay? And we're also going to talk about the differences in the saddles where they go on. Okay? So now, what determines where your saddle goes on the horse? Let me say this first. You cannot see it externally unless your horse is really poor, really skinny. Okay? You can't stand there and look at your horse and say, my horse is going to go right there. All right? Most people can't do that. What's the matter?
Your saddle, not your horse.
My saddle. Mama's keeping me on. Mama's behind the camera this morning. She's keeping me. She's helping me with my geriatric moments, okay? The saddle, all right? Now, so this person that did this video, what he said, and I'm not at all being ugly to him, okay? We're just talking information here. He said he puts his saddle pad an inch out in front, and then he runs the saddle pad down the center of the shoulder, and then that puts the saddle where it's supposed to go. That doesn't work, okay? That doesn't work. It works accidentally sometimes. But if you work jobs like I have, where we literally saddle 50 horses and mules in an hour, and you've got everything from a little tiny pony cross that stands about 13 hands to a 17-hand Belgian cross, and you've got all that, everything, and it has to be saddled. Everything has to be saddled in an hour, and you've got all these different saddles and all. There has to be an anatomical determination on where that saddle goes on each animal. Okay? All right? So what determines where the saddle goes is the scapula. The scapula is the shoulder blade. It's not the withers. The withers has nothing to do with the proper placement of your saddle. All right? Neither does the placement of the cinch. That has nothing to do with it. And I'll get more in detail on that in a minute. It's simply the scapula, the shoulder blade. It comes in here, okay? So here's the scapula. And you feel bone, you feel bone, you feel bone. If you keep feeling bone in here, all of a sudden you'll come to that pocket. You'll come to that pocket where that scapula stopped. Okay? That is the only thing that determines where the saddle goes. Okay? So that scapula stops right there. Now I'm going to take a saddle tree. These are the bars. These are called the bars of the saddle. And some wag's going to get on there and say, that tree don't fit him right. That tree's not for him, but we're just showing here, okay? So we're going to come in here. His scapula stops there. The edge of the bars needs to be in that pocket. It needs to be behind the scapula, okay? Most people put it up here. They think that this ridge right here called the withers, they think that's supposed to go up in here and that's supposed to somehow catch the saddle and keep it from rolling. It isn't and it doesn't, okay? The bars go in here, all right? And so you find that spot, you put the bar of the saddle in there, and then you cinch it down. Your saddle is not supposed to be up on the shoulders. Listen, the numbers vary a little bit, but from 60 to 75% of your horse's weight is naturally on their front hooves as he stands here, okay? So let's go in the middle, let's say 70%. So if you lead him up on one of those big floor scales at the vet to see how much he weighs, all right? And you only lead him up so only his front feet are on the scale. And then you take that number down and you lead him off so that only his back feet are on the scale. There's a huge difference in the weight. Now people look at these big hips and they say he's going to be heavier in the back. No, he's not. Because not only does he have this up here, but he has this neck and this head cantilevered out in front of him, okay? So that's very important. So he's already got a predominance of his weight on his front feet. Now, if we put the saddle on him and we set it up here on his shoulders, all right? And it's shocking how many people just do this because they've never been taught, all right? And then you set in the saddle, you're putting your weight over what is already heavily weighted, if I can say it like that, okay? In my opinion, all right, in my opinion, the hardest thing there is for a horse to do physically is to go downhill, okay? That's the hardest thing physically for a horse to do, especially with a weight, right? They going downhill, they have excess weight on the front, and then that head and neck's cantilevered out, and they're going downhill. And then you put a saddle and you put a rider that's setting up on the horse's shoulders, and then you point that horse off downhill. You've just made it so much harder. The other thing is, when we want the horse to turn, let's say we want we're riding, we're on the horse, we want the horse to turn left, the horse has to get that foot out there. He has to go left, right? Well, to do that, he has to get that weight off of that hoof. He has to bring that shoulder up and come out there. Now, he's already got 70% of his weight on his front, all right? But you put that saddle up here, and then I'm exaggerating, okay? But you put that saddle up here, and so you get more weight forward, and now it's harder for him to come up and get that. It's harder for him to maneuver and come around, okay? So now you say, Dwayne, how do we tell when the saddle is right? If you got a saddle blanket and you've got a fully saddle, you don't have a barrier tree. Well, your Western saddles will all have, to some degree or another, a concho right here in this corner, okay? Now, it may just be a silver screw-in one, but they'll have something there, all right? That concho is right here. That's where it's placed when they build the saddle, okay? So you know that concho is right here in the corner of this bar, all right? So if we saddle old Biscuit here, let me move this over here out of the way. I'll knock it down. So if we saddle old Biscuit here, then we can tell where the saddle is placed properly. Be still, buddy. All right. Now I normally do all this together, but Biscuit's got a little quirk sometimes when he's fresh. He humps his back, steps sideways out from under the saddle. He may not do that this morning. Whoa, son. Good job, buddy. All right. So if we come in here and we feel that scapula, we feel it, we feel it, we feel it. Oh, that pocket's back there. So I'm going to push my saddle back so that concho is in the pocket behind the scapula. Okay? And that's where it's supposed to be. Now I did a video last year in Tennessee on that quirky built Palomino mare, and I put the saddle on her, and I had some wag from, I don't know, Wyoming or somewhere, get on there and say, man, you don't know how to put a saddle on. That saddle's too far back. Come out here and ride with me for a week, and I'll teach you how it's done, blah, blah, blah. Any man that can watch a video with a camera 20 foot from a horse that's recorded 2,000 miles away and go off like that isn't somebody that I want to learn anything from. You can't do it by sight. You can't look at it. Look, you got two guys, 6 foot tall. All right, they're standing up straight, they're 6 foot tall, and you run a carpenter's level across the top of her head. It's perfectly level. All right. One guy wears a 36-inch inseam in his jeans. The other guy wears a 30-inch inseam, but they're both 6 feet tall. One guy's all torso, super long torso and no legs, all right? The other guy has really long legs and a short torso, but they're both 6 feet tall. So if you take these guys and you measure them, you take a tape measure, say from the armpit to the belt, the measurement's not going to be the same, all right? The scapula from horse to horse to horse is going to be a different size. And it's not going to be exactly in the same place on every horse. It's not going to be exactly in conjuncture. I try to use big words there, okay? It's not going to line up exactly with the withers with every horse. It's the skeleton inside. And their skeletons are as adjusted as ours are, all right? Just because you take two horses that are the exact same size, that does not mean that their skeletal structure is exactly the same. So you've got to find that scapula, and you've got to put the bar of the saddle behind that scapula. All right, now, I'm gonna come over here. Mama, you can just stay there. I'm just gonna drop the cinch, and I'm gonna show something else that's really important, that's really misunderstood today, okay? Let me drop this cinch down. I think last time I rode this saddle, it was on Reba the Mule in Idaho. Let me pull this around here so we can see. Now, another thing that people do not understand is the cinch placement. Now, what people will make a mistake of doing is they will move the saddle forward because they think the cinch is supposed to be, and people will say, your cinch should be 2 fingers width behind the elbow. No, for pity's sake, no, don't do that, okay? Don't do that, all right? When they first started making Western saddles back in the day, most of them are what's called center fire, okay? That means if directly in the middle of the seat, this ring was directly in the middle, center fire. So that means your cinch came right here, okay? Now you don't see them, but every once in a while they're still made. Now if you come 1 inch forward from center fire, you have 5/8 rigging. That means that's where your rigging, that's where your ring is built on the saddle. Now if you come another inch forward, you've got 3/4 rigging. If you come another inch forward, you got 7/8 rigging. And if you come another inch forward, and these aren't inches, I'm just saying, okay, you're going to have what's called full rigging. All right? That is how your saddle is built. You cannot move your saddle to put your rigging where you want it to be. That's not how that works. Okay, when your saddle maker built the saddle, he built the saddle to put the rigging in relation to the saddle as to where it's supposed to be. All right? So you put the saddle where it belongs, here. And then you let the rigging fall where it lay. All right? Whether you've got center fire, you got 5/8. All right, this isn't exact. All right, whatever. The cinch comes in where the cinch is supposed to be. Now you say, Dwayne, when I put my saddle, like you say, so that the bar is in the pocket, then my cinch comes right up in here. Then I would suggest you start looking for another saddle. Because that's how that saddle is built. And that's how your horse is built, okay? And you can't change the build of your horse, and you can't change the build of your saddle. And you can't move your saddle in relation on the horse's back to make that cinch come out where you think it ought to be, okay? All right? So you put the saddle where it goes. Now, if you put the saddle in the pocket, where it's supposed to be, that's where the saddle wants to be. That's the sweet spot. That's what it's looking for, all right? And if your saddle fits your horse, and you put the saddle where it's supposed to be, your saddle will not roll. It will not roll, all right? So, so now these bars are in that pocket. Now you say, a lot of your yard art horses, okay? Your pleasure riding, trail riding, that gets ridden every once in a while, and you guys are loving them plumb to death, and you're feeding them beyond all means of reason. The problem you're going to run into is that pocket. That pocket I'm talking about will get full of fat. All right, and it's hard to find the pocket. And even if you find the pocket, you can set that bar exactly where it's supposed to be, but the bar can't find that pocket, and so then your saddle's still going to roll. All right, that was a problem with that little Palomino. Her pocket, that shoulder pocket behind the scapula, were full of fat, and it didn't matter what saddle you put on her, it rolled. You want to go down there and find little Joe? Huh? Me and him try to cross in front of you like that, back and forth, just teasing. And I'll turn you loose here in a minute, okay? All right, so put your saddle where it belongs on the horse's back. Anatomically, not visually, okay? Put it where it belongs on the horse's back, and then pull the cinch up wherever the cinch comes in. I'm gonna say this again. If your cinch comes up on your horse when your saddle's where it's supposed to be, in a place that is inconvenient, a place that doesn't work, you change saddles. You change saddles. But this is, I'm wailing up the hill. A lot of activity going on out there, okay? All right, so it is one of the things in the horse world that is, to me, I have seen that is one of the most misunderstood things, okay, because people don't understand how this is supposed to do, okay? And it's important. Your horse will do so much better if you get that saddle where it belongs, okay? All right, so we will, that's that. Mama, how much time we got on that video?
18 minutes.
18 minutes, all right. Well, we won't add any more to it.
It's a good video.
That's a good video.
Okay, all right, so we'll quit there. Let's see, anything I want to, so we do have the ball caps and the shirts and the coffee cups are all up on the store now. We got some denim shirts and some vests on the way, should be up here in a week or so. But you can go to the website, drycreekwranglers.com, and there's a button there to take you to the store if you guys, anybody's interested in any of that. And, but other than that, Mama, there was something else I was going to talk about this morning.
You didn't tell me.
I didn't tell you. Well, I guess we're done then. So, hey, be logical, be reasonable, be safe, be nice to your horse. All right, set him up to succeed. Do the best you can as works out for him, not works out for the wags on the internet that are just trying to be seen. And have fun. And we'll catch you guys next time. All right, old timer. Good job. You know if you go running down off that hill, Waylon's going to chase you. All right, go on.